on our side, which means our side must do all the paperwork and do that. So on our side, I'm going to be pretty tight to say that they're going to have much time to give to it, something else.
Okay, because there's 2,080 hours in a 52-week, 40-hour year. So they're going to be doing 5 transactions an hour on your side.
1920.
It'll give them 10,000, right?
1920. Actually, last 18.
I don't count the vacation, yeah.
Whatever you say, I'll go with you. I don't have my own.
Okay, but we're saying like 5 or 6 hours. So on your side, you're saying that's going to be a person full-time, that's all they're going to be able to do?
It's going to be so close to it, but of course, with our office, we have to fill in where the need is needed at the time.
Okay. Same is true for you in the treasurer's office? Okay, so these would be purely dedicated people. Okay, is that $700,000 estimate, is that like just for next year, or we kind of can see into the future and think it's that much every year? I mean, nobody's Kreskin, but just to think.
Well, the estimate came from actual documentation of how many cars we have deleted and added during the year, so you're going to see more revenue each year from it. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? As the board wish to dispose of this issue? We don't. You want to authorize the hiring of the 2 positions effective October 1? You want to think about it and vote on it to the next board meeting, which is September the 11th, which is probably going to be a little short if we want to put them on board October 1.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Taylor.
We basically have said that we were going to prorating, and that it's going to be certainly beneficial to the county to do that. And I think everybody up here understands that that's going to require some more manpower. So I don't see how waiting is going to change any of that. So I would, if a motion is in order, I would move that we approve the hiring of the 2 new positions that's needed for the commissioner and the treasurer based on the prorating coming into play.
At the
yes,
estimated
103, 267.
Well, at the
total salary
13.
as indicated.
grade 13, a level 13 or grade 13.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we approve the hiring of 2 positions at a grade level 13. Is there discussion on the motion? All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried unanimously. The board will take a 15 or 20-minute recess. We'll reconvene the Board of Supervisors meeting. The next item on the agenda is public comments. I'm going to ask Mrs. Hall if she will read the rules for public comments, as well as the public hearing, which would we have several public hearings to be held after the public comment period. Mrs. Hall, if you would, please.
The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. The public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and antagonistic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and voting district, if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. The county administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired. Copies of the detailed rules are located on the back table.
All right. At this point, we will declare the public comment period open. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any issue that is not a public hearing this evening? If so, please come forward and state your name and your voting district.
My name is George Parker. I live in Mattaponi Voting District in Belmont. On Tuesday the 7th, we hosted our first ever National Night Out event, and it was a success beyond anything we could have imagined. We had many of our community there, as well as a couple board members and members of Sheriff Lippa's office, and we'd like to thank all of you who attended for helping to make it a successful event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on any issue that is not associated with a public hearing this evening? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on any issue not associated with a public hearing? Hearing no further comment, the public comment period is declared closed. The next item on the agenda is public hearings. You heard the rules for the public hearing comment period. And the first public hearing of this evening is RZ 01-2012, Doris M. Coleman, owner and applicant. Mr. Finchel.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your first public hearing tonight is a rezoning request from rural preservation to R2 residential on a portion of tax map 85-A-2 containing approximately 0.71 acres of land. The property is located at 22,260 Panola Road in Ruther Glen, Mattaponi Voting District. The proposed use is residential, and the 2030 comprehensive plan designates this area as rural preservation with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land. The applicant is requesting the rezoning of 0.71 acres with an existing dwelling from rural preservation to R2, which allows a lot size of 25,000 square feet without public water or sewer. The 0.71 acre parcel is a part of an agreement made back in 1974 between the Colemans and the current owners of that residence, the Wheelers, whereas the Wheelers would purchase the property from the Colemans with payment from the Wheelers to the Colemans over a 20-year period of time. However, neither the agreement nor the plat were recorded back at that time when the agreement was made. Since those documents were never recorded and the lot was never created, you currently have a situation where you have 2 dwelling units on a single parcel of land that are subject to this agreement. Because the owners are seeking to complete the terms of the agreement and to sell the house with these 0.71 acres of land to the Wheelers, they must, by necessity, have the property rezoned to a zoning classification that would allow the subdivision to occur, which is the reason this application is before the Board of Supervisors tonight. Because of the fact that there are 2 existing dwelling units on the property, there would be no impact on the community in that the residences are already in existence. So you're not creating the potential for any new dwellings to be created with this rezoning. Based upon the facts at hand, the Planning Commission did forward this recommendation to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval. And staff will answer any questions that the board may have.
Board have any questions of Mr. Fincham before we open the public hearing? Mr. Fincham, there does not appear any questions at this point. We will now declare the public hearing open for RZ-01-2012, Doris M. Coleman, owner and applicant. And you heard the description of the rezoning request. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition? Wick, it's good to see you.
My name is Wickham B. Coleman, Jr. in the Madison Magisterial District, and I represent my mother. She was not able to come. She's kind of been under weather since the passing of my father, and this was an agreement entered into, as Mr. Fincham said, in 1984 between Mr. and Mrs. Wheeler and my mother and father. and consideration was given. They did pay for the property, but due to the not recording anything, other than just recording the payments and all in a primitive type of fashion, we didn't have any means to record it because the planning and zoning in the county had changed from the parcel. It is my intention to keep the 0.71 acres, to deed that to Mr. and Ms. Wheeler and have that R2 and keep the remaining, I suppose it would be 7 point whatever it is, 03 or whatever it is, more or less, keep the 7 acres more or less as still rural preservation and still continue to farm it. There is 2 residences on the property, however, one is abandoned, was my great uncle's home, and that may even be destroyed in the near future and go back and revert back into farming land. But it will be maintained as there will only be 1 residence there, and that'll be Mr. and Ms. Wheeler. And this property has been a residence, can trace it probably to the early 20s and 30s. My grandfather and grandmother lived there and rented it when they were building the house where the farm currently is now. And like I say, it has been a residence just about for 100 years. So Ms. Gordon purchased her house and what is now Polecat Antiques from Henry and Lucy Jeter years ago after Henry's passing. And Mrs. Jeter owned this property previously. And my grandfather originally bought it from Ms. Jeter. And that's the way it transpired. But that's all we're trying to do, just to give Mr. and Ms. Wheeler a clear deed to their property and clear markings to what is theirs.
Gotcha. Understand. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board on this issue, either in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? Is there anyone else who would like to express interest or concern, either in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? Hearing no further comment, the public hearing is declared closed. Does the board have any questions of the applicant or of Mr. Fincham?
No questions. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Thomas?
If I may, I'd like to move the approval of RZ 01-2012.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Seeley, that we approve RZ-01-2012. Doris M. Coleman. Discussion on the motion. All in favor vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed nay, and the motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is public hearing for RZ 03-2012. Ernest and Yolanda Johnson, owner and applicant. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public hearing is RZ 03-2012 for Ernest and Yolanda Johnson, owner and applicant. They're requesting a rezoning from RR2 with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres of land to rural preservation with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres of land on tax map 41-A-99A, which contains 2 acres. Property is located at 12,469 Page Road in the Port Royal voting district. The proposed use is residential, specifically a family apartment. The 2030 comprehensive plan designates this area as agricultural preservation with a density of 1 unit per 25 acres of land. The applicant is requesting a rezoning of 2 acres with an existing dwelling from RR2 to rural preservation. The subject property was part of a 4-acre rezoning from RP to RR2 back in 1997 and was subsequently subdivided into 2 2-acre lots. The applicant is requesting that this parcel be rezoned from RR2 back to RP to allow a family apartment for their daughter. The Rural Preservation District permits property with an existing single-family dwelling to have a family apartment which meets certain criteria in the zoning ordinance to be constructed on the property. For example, family apartments, they may be manufactured homes or stick-built. They cannot exceed 1,000 square feet in size and must be occupied by an immediate family member for at least 3 years. Based upon the current configuration of the property, the applicant meets the criteria for a family apartment to be placed on the property if it is rezoned. Planning Commission held its public hearing on June 20th, 2012 and forwarded this request to the board with a recommendation of approval. The applicant has also proffered certain additional restrictions Normally, under the family apartment provisions, after the 3-year time limit, the apartment can then be rented out to a non-family member. The applicant has agreed to restrict that so that it would not be potentially rented out to a non-family member to address, because you're rezoning back to RP from RR2, to address concerns about this becoming a rental unit.
Questions of Mr. Fincham before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, one.
Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Fincham, can this property be sold and this special exception convey?
No, sir. The way the proffers are written, it is tied to this particular property owner and the family apartment needs for this particular property owner. And as such, it would require an amendment to allow the family apartment to remain if it were sold.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one other question. Should this apartment no longer be needed for whatever reason, they do plan to move it, or is that a part of the proffers, or?
It could not be rented out or used by anybody else. It would have to be an immediate family member.
And that was they voluntarily did that?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Taylor, just to let you know, I know this is now in the Port Royal district,
Right.
but it was in the Mattapanai district for the 10 years before that, and I'd worked with Mrs. Johnson for a while to get this 1997 rezoning. And the purpose is really to put our daughter into another place. That's why we did the original one, and she paid a lot more money to undo it and do it a different way. So that's really what's going on. And I believe her sister lives on one side of her, and her father's estate is on the other side. So I think it's a family subdivision already.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. Public hearing is declared open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this rezoning request? Hearing no further comments, the public hearing is declared closed. The board have any questions of the applicant or Mr. Fincham?
Mr. Chairman, I would move.
Mr. Taylor.
I would move that rezoning 03-2012 for Ernest Johnson and Yolanda Johnson be forwarded to the board with an approval.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that RZ-03-2012, Ernest and Yolanda Johnson be approved with proffers.
With proffers.
Is discussion on the motion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. The next item on the agenda this evening is item number 5, special exception 06-2012, Mark Lovell, with consent of substitute trustee, owner applicant. Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of your board, your next public hearing tonight is SBEX 06-2012, requesting amendment to special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 9, Division 6, Section 3 of the Caroline County zoning ordinance. Subject property is zoned Planned Recreation and Entertainment District, and the subject to the public hearing is a proposed amendment to condition number 1 to change the ownership reference of the State Fair. The board is familiar with the history of the State Fair, and as part of the trustee sale of that property, the entity purchasing the State Fair property has, of course, its own name. The original special exception permits was issued to Meadow Event Park and Atlantic Rural Exposition doing business as the State Fair of Virginia. The substitute name for that would be Commonwealth Fairs and Events, LLC, doing business as the State Fair of Virginia. And we are simply amending that condition to change the ownership reference for that property to reflect the new ownership.
Questions of Mr. Fincham before we open the public hearing? All right. Thank you, Mr. Fincham. The public hearing is declared open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to special exception 06-2012?
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I just wanted to introduce, I'm Brian Ellsworth. I didn't do that last time. My apologies when we met. But and Mark Lovell's here. Just wanted to meet you guys, say thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? One last call. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? Hearing no further comment, the public hearing is declared closed. Board have comments, questions of applicant or of Mr. Fincham? Or the applicant's designee?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve special exception 06-0212, change the name of the State Fair to the State Fair Virginia Incorporated as so articulated by Mr. Fincham.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Underwood, seconded by Mr. Thomas, that we approve special exception 06-2012. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And the motion is carried. The board will take a 5-minute recess.
He wanted to talk to somebody. Mr. Lovell?
The Board of Supervisors meeting. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, special exception 07-2012, Beverly Run LLC owner, Potatoes Adolescent Services applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, your next public hearing is SPEX 07-2012, Beverly Run LLC owner, Veritas Adolescent Services applicant. They're requesting a special exception permit in accordance with Article 17, Section 13, and Article 4, Section 5.28 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance on tax map 76-A-19, containing approximately 75 acres of land. The property is located off of Passing Road at 20,500 Remuda Lane in the Bowling Green District. Proposed use is a therapeutic health care facility. The 2030 comprehensive plan designates this area as agricultural preservation with a density of 1 dwelling unit per 25 acres of land. The applicant is requesting approval for a special exception to allow a new therapeutic health facility where Remuda Ranch previously operated. They were requesting a special exception permit on 75 of 346 acres of the property, which is the same 75 acres that was used by Remuda. The applicant is proposing services to children ages 13 to 18 on site in a boarding school type of configuration. While the main focus of the facility will be therapeutic in nature, a schooling component is necessary based upon the age of the students. Planning Commission held a work session and a public hearing on the application and had a number of questions related to the educational component and security and safety of the children, which were ultimately addressed to the satisfaction of the Commission. After the public hearing, the Planning Commission did forward a recommendation to the board for approval of the request, subject to the conditions that are contained in your staff report. And with that, staff will address any questions that the board may have.
Board members have any questions of Mr. Fincham before we open a public hearing? Thank you, Mr. Fincham. We will now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to or in favor of the special exception?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Sheriff?
I was not with the Planning Commission. However, I did have a representative of this agency at the other meeting that involved Remuda Ranch and what's proposed now on Remuda Ranch. I have concerns as a chief law enforcement officer because I don't know enough about what they plan on bringing in. What's going to be their guidelines? It's almost like we're comparing apples to oranges. From what we had before was dealing with people that were there that dealt with disorders that were eating disorders. Now we have a situation where, again, it's the unknown. To my constituents that are down there in the Sparta area, their concerns are my concerns when it comes to law enforcement and what needs it's going to be or tax us to be able to take care of the same problems that we may or may not occur. We did have some runaways, and again, we're in a situation that was far and few in between. They do have a security system, but it's a different component that they're asking to bring in. And I would like to have more answers when they were talking about therapeutic. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about those that might have a dependency on a chemical dependency? Is it going to be just is it marijuana use? Is it cocaine? Is it heroin? What else could be involved with this? They mentioned the age, as I thought they said, from 13 or 14 up to 18. So now do we have some adults that might be in there? My concerns is the security system that they have. What are they going to do with what's there? To when would they notify us? And I think we have a different clientele. So I don't have all of the information that I feel comfortable as the chief law enforcement officer to have in front of me to make that sound decision. But hearing the constituents and their concerns are also my concerns. And I just wanted to bring that before the board.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor or opposition to? Mr. West, good to see you.
Good evening, Board. You know me, Matthew West. And my concerns are basic, or part of it is basically what the sheriff has just talked about, is security. And I understand, based on their literature, that they will have kids with drug problems, problems with being rebellious against their parents, and with up to 18 years old kids there, and a neighborhood which is mostly seniors. I will hope we'll never have a problem where they come to our homes, but I have driven into the facility and I don't see any fencing, any way to really keep them there. And I feel it's going to be a problem to the community. And also, if they do have problems such as illness, I work with the DARE program, and I know them kids will get into it and fight and carry on. But if it's going to be emergencies that happen there, and whether we're going to have to provide a new ambulance for the Sparta Fire Department because of that facility, and if the sheriff is going to have to take care of the security, it's going to be the cost to the community. I see that there isn't any plan that they have put forward that say they have any real method of security or retaining the kids. And like the sheriff mentioned, there were a couple of kids that were there just because they were too heavy or weren't eating enough that got out of that facility, and it was never a problem. But we're talking about a different child based on what they say they're going to have there. That's basically what I want to say. It's going to wind up costing us if they don't put in some kind of fencing. They do have a problem. How is the community going to be notified that there's somebody loose in there? Is it my sheriff's responsibility to get in touch with everybody? What method of notifying us? And being seniors down through that, well, just about everybody's a senior. How do we defend ourselves if something like that come about? All it takes is one incident, and then we're at the mercy of the courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West. Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Glenda Rinaldi. I live at 29377 Sparta Road in the Bowling Green District. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition of the Veritas Adolescent Services Center coming to our community due to security concerns. we would have had more people to be here tonight to speak in opposition, but we are holding revival services at our church this week. However, I have a petition here signed by several of the community members.
Okay. Ms. Hall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rinaldi. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor to or in opposition to this request?
I'm Alan Tigner Jr., and I live at 31398 Sparta Road. My wife and I own property right adjacent to this property, so naturally I have a great interest in it. But I was able to attend all of that I know of the previous hearings, planning commission, and so forth and so on. And there was quite a bit of questioning about the security, about the definition of therapeutic and care, and so forth and so on. Since I own property right adjacent to it, I did have concerns about, my machinery being there and so forth and so on. But most of my questions were pretty clearly answered by the people that are trying to have this school there. And this is a unique piece of property. Eventually it is going to be sold, and you always take a risk when you sell a piece of property of how it's going to be used. So the conclusion I came to is I'd rather take a risk with these people, since I've got to know them a little bit and have heard the way they're planning on handling security and so forth. So I'm not objecting to them having a facility there. In fact, I think it would be a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Tigner. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to or in favor of this special exception request? One last call. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to the special exception request? One last call. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of or in opposition? Hearing no further comment, the public hearing is declared closed. Does the board have any comment, any questions of staff? Or I assume the applicant is here? Okay.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, if the applicant could come without...
Yes, I think the applicant is coming forward here. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening.
My name is Marcus Hamaker. I'm the Director of Operations for Abundant Life Academy. I do have a video, about a 4-minute video, that would explain quite a bit about the Academy and the type of kids that were coming in and what we do, if you guys are willing to see that.
Yeah, I think we need to see that. Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
I could never trust anyone. I just pushed my parents away.
I never felt heard. I never felt like I got to do what I wanted, so I just started doing what I wanted.
I acted out. I ran away.
Didn't know where to turn. Didn't care. I was in a bad place, and I knew I wanted to get out because I hated the way I was living. Now I felt
He was sad and lonely. And he was in trouble.
We had no more control over our home, over Charlie. We didn't feel like it was a safe place anymore. We just could never break through.
And he's a good kid. And I promised him I wouldn't leave him. And he's a good kid.
Your other's going through the same thing.
The right decision
know I'll never leave or let you go. You're not alone. I'm with you till the end. You're not alone. I'm closer than a friend.
People started sharing their experiences and their stories, and it made me realize that I'm not alone.
I would say that the ALA program has really given me personally a sense of hope.
We see the fruit of what happens here at ALA. And that's just confirmation that he's in the right place.
ALA has opened my eyes to the choices I've made and how they had a negative impact on me. This place teaches you how to pick yourself back up, and it gives you the tools to, make choices before, look at the outcome of it before you make that decision.
That's that paradigm shift that we only change and progress through mistakes.
They teach you how to be you and make wise decisions for yourself.
Since I've been here, I've held myself accountable and said, these are the actions I did, but, this is why I did it.
Then on a deeper level, there's been some really big growth, maturity moments.
Like I can see colors that I never saw. I can hear what people say that I didn't hear before. Just everything seems a lot brighter.
There's no better feeling than seeing that light bulb go on. The desire that they want is just a thought away. And what I mean by that is they just got to change the way they think.
Since I've been here, I've realized that I can do big things and even maybe save other lives.
This is great. I have a relationship with my parents and my sister, and I don't think there's anything I would trade for it in the world.
I've really come closer to God, but for me and not for anybody else. And I've never had that experience before, and it feels a lot better than having it, it's real and not fake.
It's got to be a heart change. It's got to be something you're willing to do. So I'm willing to do that now, and I've made the choice for myself. No one made it for me.
God's so real in my life now, it's crazy. He does work miracles. You're about to get your world rocked. You can't be in this environment without the Spirit of God affecting your life. When you have a relationship, when you can change somebody's life, that's the treasure in heaven type of stuff.
Okay. Board, I think questions, and Mr. Underwood, you had indicated, I believe, I heard you speak up a few minutes ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hammaker, how are you this evening? First, I'd like to talk about the staff that will be there in terms of qualifications and training.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to that for me very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. All of our staff that's very loud, sorry about that. All of our staff go through a 90-day training on our specific program. I actually, the last 3 days, spent pretty much 6 to 7 hours a day interviewing local people that, one, used to work at Remuda Ranch and also that live in the surrounding area. We actually tentatively hired roughly 17 people over the last 3 days. Qualified staff. Our actual director of security is Fred Green, and Paul will speak on him.
When you say qualified, though, can you give me some specifics?
Absolutely. So qualified staff for us would mean an LCSW, a license.
Right.
Yeah,
Clinical
exactly.
Most
of our therapists, if not all of them, have a master's degree qualification. They all have bachelor's degree. We have therapists, we have life coaches. Life coaches don't necessarily have to have a degree, but most of them that we've hired here do.
So you're saying your teaching staff then? What about your teaching staff?
Absolutely. Our principal.
Will they be licensed in Virginia?
Absolutely. Yes, they have to be.
Right.
We're an accredited high school. We're in the process of transferring our accreditation through to Virginia. We've already been in touch with the accrediting bodies. And it's not too much different than Utah. We actually just went through our 6-year accreditation in May of this year. So the governing body, which is Northwest, I'm forgetting the name, it's Northwest Association, is actually the umbrella that does the Southeast accrediting.
I think we're SACs here.
Yeah, exactly. So we've already been in touch with them. our principals talk to him.